Hello, good afternoon everybody, happy Friday. I hope you've had a fantastic service this week. Very warm welcome to everyone in the room and then everyone on the stream, hello. I don't know how I ended up here, but I did last year, got asked back, so something went right. But yeah, I'm Harry, I'm a product manager here at GDS, here on the digital service. For those that maybe haven't been involved during this week, Service Week is a national event to showcase the work that public servants are doing across the country to improve our public services. And in this final event of the week, we will show people how GDS is, what we're doing to help public servants improve those public services. So this has been really exciting. There's been loads of events that Martin will give you a little bit of an overview about in a second. But for me, like my highlight of the week has been seeing how the NHS are changing the referrals and appointments booking service. Something that all of us will have experienced at some point. It's really tricky, but they're doing some amazing discovery work, and they're starting to work with legislators across the whole of the NHS to kind of challenge that and push that back and see where they can actually start to make changes. So that was really exciting. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our agenda for today. So we have a bit of an introduction to the strategy for the digital data and technology function across the government from Angus, a bit of an overview of what the service line support team has been doing to support the rest of government from Lena and Ben, a bit about what the Gov.uk design system has been up to from Tim, the Youth Centre Design Communities team from Kara, accessibility monitoring, we're going to hear an update sort of a year on from when that team first started from Kevin and Ariana. Some stuff about the exciting work on Gov.uk from Stephen, about Gov.uk Pay from Katie, and then Notify from P, and then finally a little introduction to standards assurance, one of the oldest parts of the government digital service, from Simon. So we've changed our approach to questions this year. Any of you dialed in last year know we had a really long email address. We're doing it slightly shorter this year, so we're using something called Slido. So as you get up your internet browser and you go to Slido, so sli.do, you can enter the hashtag #ShowTell on there, and this is how we're going to be asking and responding to questions. And you can see everyone else's questions on there and you can vote on them. So I'll be asking the top 1 or 2 questions on there, depending on time. So let's do a bit of a test. We're agile. So what was your highlight of the week from the service this week? And then following on from Angus, we'll play back some of the people's highlights. So what's next? We are going to have a bit of an overview of some of the highlights of service this week from Martin. So please give a very warm welcome to Martin.
Thank you. And I have a spinning wheel here, that's amazing. I love that. So what you should see here is something that says Services Week 2020, because this is what happened basically throughout the last 5 days. And Services Week is a cross-government event that happened in multiple locations all across the UK. And this was not just central government departments, but also their agencies, various local authorities, and as well the NHS. So there were at least 80 different events taking place in these 14 locations, organized by more than 24 organizations across government. And it seems that none of my images are loading. That's very much relief. What you should see here is a hashtag that says #ServicesWeek. So this is the hashtag that we have been using throughout the week. Well, all of the public servants who have been tweeting about that have used that hashtag. So if you are on Twitter, you might want to check #ServicesWeek because it gives you quite a good idea of what happened. At its core, Services Week is and was about recognizing a fairly straightforward thing, that government has a very fundamental role as a service provider. And well, government is the largest service provider in this country. So Services Week has been supported with a self-organized week of events to discuss all services. And now I realize that none of my images are loading, and I'm going to leave briefly the presentation, hope that all that pops up, and well, Slides are not there, just the text. It's going to reload, because we've been prepping this for the last 3 days, and it worked. And of course now it doesn't. Okay, something is there, that's good. So luckily this is only going to happen to me, but to none of the other presenters later. Fabulous. So, as Harry said, I'm just going to give a brief overview of what happened throughout the week. So we started on Monday morning with a panel discussion on challenges in different government organizations around improving public services with public servants. So we had the design directors from Home Office, from Homes England, from Department of Environment and Rural Affairs, and as well the NHS Digital, and we had a 90-minute long discussion in the Monday morning where people dialed in and asked related questions, how to shape services so they work better for users. Throughout the week we had quite a few workshops. Someone's giggling here in front of me because they've been running this fantastic workshop about how to write more compelling blog posts, because we have this approach of sharing as much as we can. So quite a few people were attending a workshop on how to blog more and blog better. This was just one workshop. There was earlier today a workshop on User Needs 101 in Manchester. We have seen a lot of training being offered throughout the week. There was an introduction to service design training that was offered 2 times in Gateshead and as well in Blackpool. And here in London we had a new services mapping masterclass that was immediately booked out. There's also a 2-day user research training in Leeds, other training on building better forms, and this was combined with things we did remotely. So we offered as well case study presentations that everybody could join independent of their location. So always during lunchtime, presented remotely. We heard from Essex County Council. They talked about service patterns. We had HMRC talking about end-to-end services and making tax digital. We had Sylvia from the flood warning unit as part of the environmental agency talking about how they are designing services, especially for people who are in areas where there is the risk of flooding. We had someone from the HM Court and Tribunal Service talking about their service offering. And today, 2 hours ago, we heard from the NHS Digital team about that 111 online service. We also offered remote Q&As and clinics. So there was a design challenge session where we talked about the difficulties of measuring service performance. We had one-on-one service design slots for 15, 30, 45 minutes where you could dial in and ask very specific questions. Similar things were offered as well in other parts of the country face-to-face. And then we published quite a few blog posts. There was one blog post around how to keep the journeyman alive. There was one on the changing role of outsourcing in the public sector. And you can have a look at that Services in Government blog. This is a blog that we just launched in autumn. There we're compiling a lot of relevant stories around service transformation in the public sector. There were also quite a few meetups. There was one meetup in this building on Wednesday evening, but also meetups in Manchester and Leeds. And some of those were open to the public. So throughout the week, thousands of public servants participated in the Services Week. And if you go to this Service in Government blog, you can read more about that. We're going to publish on Monday a recap blog post summarizing all of the things that happened throughout the week and pointing as well to the various blog posts that were published and as well to the recordings that were made available to the public. And now, this is where I stop talking and open space for the representations from the 9 teams that we hear from.
Thanks so much, Martin. So we're going to see if our tests work. I'm going to go on to Slido now and read out some of the things that people have found really great about Services Week. So from Ruth, we had best thing for me, and no doubt for others who are joining remotely, with the number of sessions available remotely. Alison echoes that. It's the incredible diversity of the remote sessions and feels missing out. So it's really good. I think it's one of our aims as a government digital service to make sure that wherever you are in the public sector across the UK, that you feel part of this community, you can share and learn from each other. So really good to see. And then Gethin said, favourite thing from Service Week, sheer level of engagement across so many different parts of government. It's amazing to see all the things they've been doing. And we just had one just come in from Anonymous. I love keeping up with what I've missed on Twitter, so hashtag Services Week for those that don't know. All right, without further ado, having seen that the questions are working, please give a very warm welcome to Angus.
Hello. Thank you. I'm Angus. I'm a strategy advisor here at GDS. Before I start, actually, can I just give a big shout out to Martin for fixing the slide deck on the fly? Because I don't think I could have done that without sort of descending into a puddle of sweat or crying or something. So, top tech support skills there from Martin. So I'm going to talk briefly about a project that we're working on at the moment around GDS and digital data and technology strategy in government, and it's called the 2030 Vision. So it's our vision of what we want government to look like in 2030. And I'm going to give a little bit of context about how that fits into government services as well. So basically what I'm doing, I think why I'm starting is I'm sort of talking to you about why we're doing all the work that you're about to hear about in the other presentations, and I'm just doing the talky stuff. So to start with, just a bit about why have a strategy, why organisations have a strategy in the first place. Strategy is about helping organisations prepare for the future. So it's about thinking about diagnosing the current situation that you're in, developing a vision of where you want to get to, and then providing a coherent sort of roadmap and set of actions to get you from the current state to that future state. So what it's not about is predicting what the future will look like. So it's not about saying, this is exactly what's going to happen, and therefore we should do this. Because no one can accurately predict the future. Because if you start to do that, you get into this situation where you're like, oh, we're going to have flying cars and humanoid robots on the streets and all those sorts of things. And no one can say, apart from the people who wrote, I think this is the more recent Blade Runner, rather than the one that was actually set in 2019, no one can say that the future will look like this and that there will be this kind of technology available to us. Although it's possible that, we could develop ever more intimate relationships with computer operating systems. I think this is Joaquin Phoenix in Her, where he sort of falls in love with his virtual assistant. And I've not seen it, but I presume it ends happily ever after. The point I'm trying to make is, we don't know what technology is coming in the future, and we can't accurately predict how people will respond to that technology. So it would be stupid to try to do that, right? But we do know that things will change. So we do know that technology will change. We do know that people's relationship with it and people's expectations of it will change. And therefore we do know that government must be in a position where it can respond to this. So in order to do that, we think government and government services must be joined up, trusted and responsive to user needs by 2030, which is kind of the date that we set for when we think this should happen. What we mean by that in a bit more detail is, by joined up, we mean that all of government must be able to work together to support users to do the things that they need to do with government. So this might mean working across existing departmental or professional or technological boundaries. By trusted, we mean that users must trust that government is keeping them safe and secure in their interactions with government. So when they're doing the thing that they need to do with us, we are looking after their security and their privacy and their safety, and that includes people's data and transactions and things like that. And by responsive to user needs, we mean that as technology develops and as we start to develop new things and new services and new ways of delivering things, we must build all of that around user needs. So every decision that we take, whether it's a decision to apply a new piece of technology or build something or buy something, we must do that in response to what users need to do. And the reason 2030 is an end date, and it's like a 10-year thing, this is a big fundamental, this is a big fundamental challenge, and it involves tackling a number of big fundamental things. So, we're starting this now, this work is happening at the moment, and it will progress, and things will happen, there will be milestones and touch points over the way, but it would be stupid to say, yes, we can do all this in a year or 18 months. We need to be realistic about what we can do. So we set kind of 10-year goal, but within that we are going to be working and hitting milestones. So we're not waiting until 2029 to do all this stuff, basically. And And the top line, what I'm saying is, this is about fixing the basics, right? It's about preparing government to take advantage of new technology. It's not about applying shiny new technology for the sake of it. And throughout all of this, we need to think about what this means for our users. So, as any decision that we're taking or anything that we do, we need to think about how this will impact on the people interacting with government. So, for users, we need to think about things like how we can help and guide them through services. So that might include things like complex life events, like having a child, or setting up a business, or importing something. We need to think about how we can ensure that they get the things that they need from government without having to understand our internal structures or processes, or knowing exactly where they need to go and exactly the right question they need to ask in order to get something. And we need to think about how we can ensure there are no barriers that might prevent people from getting what they need from government, and ensuring that they can interact with government using the technology that they want to use. And 10 years down the line, that might be something that we don't even know about yet. And it's really important as well that we're thinking about civil servants as users as well, because civil servants are going to be the people, we are going to be the people who make this happen. So it means giving civil servants the tools and the capabilities they need in order to use technology and to meet user needs. It means enabling effective cross-government collaboration, having things like consistent technologies, ways of communicating and sharing things, ensuring everyone has the right standards and guidance so they know they're doing the right thing, and just making sure we can all work together, like we all have a common understanding of what we're trying to do, and we're all enabled and empowered to work together to do that thing. And as we've been developing this kind of strategy and this vision, we've been speaking to lots and lots of people across digital governments and asking them, like, what are the fundamental challenges that prevent you from doing this stuff at the moment? Like, what are the things that we need to fix in order to get to this vision? And through that, we've identified like 5 sort of foundational challenges or big problems, I suppose, or big areas of focus. And these are the things that people across digital government have told us, like, these are important things that we need to fix. So it's things like security, which means ensuring that all services and interactions that people have with government are secure, and that government is secure in the things that it builds and buys and uses. It means ensuring that legacy technology isn't a barrier or a distraction that prevents government from adopting new technology or delivering effective services. It means enabling a consistent approach to identity assurance, so meaning that people, when they interact with services online, they're able to prove that they are who they say they are. And if government can do that consistently, it helps services join up and it helps us transform more quickly. It means unlocking the potential of data by ensuring that teams across government can easily share and use data in a really secure and privacy-centric way as well. And it means ensuring that all of government and all teams involved in delivering government services, every person involved in that kind of service process, can focus on user needs and the experience of end users, so that everything we're building is responsive to user needs, continues to be responsive to user needs. And as we're doing all this, we need to tackle these challenges. We need to work together from GDS and across DDAT to make sure that we're doing the right thing, but also we're doing all this in a way that's scalable and sustainable. So, like, we're tackling these problems, we're fixing them, we're putting in place stuff that we can all use, and we're sorting this thing out once and for all. We're building the foundations of the government that can be joined up, trusted, and responsive to user needs. So it's like, I think, again, the kind of reductive view of this strategy is like big problems, big, consistent, working together solutions, fixing the plumbing, fixing the basics, and building a government that works. And that's enough about strategy, really, because what you want to hear is the delivery. So, although you might have a question which might spoil my beautiful segue into Lena's bit. But that's me. Is there a question, or shall I?
So let's see if we've got any questions for Angus. So in the meantime, while you come up with your questions for Angus, Jonathan asked, are these sessions archived anywhere? For those that can't see it, Martin's just replied to that saying the recording of this session will be available later on YouTube. That's youtube.com/UK.gov.design. So that's where you can find some of the archives. And that's got recordings from across the whole of Services Week as well, I believe, for the ones that were available publicly. Yeah. Cool. Have we got any other questions? Let's see.
Jill Bailey.
Jill Bailey. Oh, here's a good question. All of government joined up by 2030. Sounds good. How are you involving local government in this target? Angus, on to you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the strategy and our kind of scope for this is we're looking at digital data and technology teams in central government departments, because primarily that's the bit that we're thinking about. They're the main focus of kind of our service delivery at the moment. Having said that, though, we are well aware that when you're talking about any form of end-to-end service or any form of sort of, I suppose, life event or interaction that someone's going to have with government, that's going to involve lots and lots of other people. So it involve local government, it might involve the NHS, it might involve charities, it might involve elements of the private sector as well. So we do need to be working together in order to properly serve users. We, at the moment, our focus is in let's get central government working in this consistent way, and once we are doing that, we can then talk to others about how we can sort of spread that out a bit and all join together. So it's certainly something that we're thinking about, but at the moment we're kind of starting from the centre and sort of moving out. So that's
Cool, thank you very much, Angus. I think that's probably all we've got time for in terms of questions. Now, I'm going to need a bit of help from the audience for this one. We've got this massive screen, and somewhere on here I need to land my cursor on this X to get rid of this little pop-up. So you're going to have to tell me where this mouse is.
Lower.
Lower?
Lower. Yeah.
Is that it?
Great.
Alright, is this thing, shall I leave this thing? Is that...
It might happen automatically, just leave it.
Yeah.
Alright.
Great.
Cool. So I'm told that there's about 100, 125 people joined remotely. So what I want you to do, if you're in an office, please grab someone who's sat next to you and tell them to take their headphones off and come watch this. If you're dialed in at home, send a message to your colleagues and tell them to come along. The more we can spread the word, the more we can build this community. So thank you very much, Angus, for that first heads up about our strategy. Now I'd like to introduce Lena and Ben Carpenter, who are going to talk about service design support at GDS. So round of applause.
Thank you. Clara disappeared and I need some technical support. So basically, I'm going to present some work we've done, but also Ben. But Ben is working from home and he's currently in Wales. So we tried to do this as an experiment. But let's see how it goes. Hopefully Clara comes back and she will help him to get his voice heard. Anyway, okay.
Do you need it lifting?
Not now. I'm just going to do 10 slides and then Ben's going to take over. Okay, so Ben and I work in a team at GDS called Service Design Support, and we give team advice around how to build better services. And today I will speak about the work we do. But first, I want to give you a short introduction to why we do this work and start by explaining what GDS is set up to do. So GDS was founded in 2012, and we were asked to help transport government be more user-centered. Our role is to help department create and deliver better services by putting users first. So part of changing the way teams in government design services, GDS need to show them what good looks like. And teams across government need a North Star to guide and align the direction to follow when transforming. That is why we created a service standard at GDS. And we ask teams to build services that meet the standard. To help teams follow the standard, there are a set of functions that helps make that happen, and one of them is monitoring quality. So we have an assurance team here at GDS that will come in at certain points in a service development to check if the team is actually developing the service the way we think is best for users. We have guidance, so we're aware that the service standard, which is now 14 points, might be quite high level, so if you want to read more about the details, you need to read the service manual, and that will give you more detailed understanding of how to meet the standard. We also have a few teams in place that help build capability. So if you find that this is really hard, I don't have enough skills to actually deliver to the standard, we have several different training functions that you can attend to upskill. And then where we come in is on advice and support. Across GDS, it's not actually just my team, it's also a team that are really skilled in data and technology, and they give team support around that. We have some people around assurance that's dedicated to help teams deliver to the standard, and when they go to an assessment, they help and support them to do the right thing. And then we have service design support, which focuses more on the design element of it. which is the team Ben and I work in. And what we do is we advise teams on how to design user-centered services. They can be about helping them create a journey map, giving them feedback on a journey map. It can be about helping them understand why to create personas or how the persona should be made, or just scoping the work in the first place. We also provide a service design boost to teams, and that can be coming and running a workshop to help them map the journey. It can be about helping them build in the personas and so on. So that kind of explains what we do and why we do it. I'm going to hand over to Ben to talk about one of the teams that he supported the last few months, actually. And we'll see how it goes.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I think so. We can
Wow, through a microphone.
Yeah, please
Hi,
open.
can everyone hear me?
Yeah, just going to check on the room. We just can't see your slides.
I don't mind what I can see, it's fine. Can you not see the slides?
No. Just don't know which one you want.
Oh, I'm just on the next one, case study.
Okay, so
So what's this? 2 Hangouts, 1 YouTube channel, a Jabra, my headset, 3 MacBooks.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so I've been work at GDS, like Lena said, work with Lena on the service design support team. And I've been working on a small team of ours at GDS, who's been over at the Home Office, helping the UK Central Authority team to think about the requests that they get for mutual legal assistance. I won't bore you with what mutual legal assistance is too much. It's basically countries overseas asking us for information about UK citizens. So the challenge we have is that, as I say, overseas authorities, they can ask the UK for legal information about UK citizens to help them with prosecutions. Most of these are things like speeding fines, and low-level crimes, should we say. If the UK loses access to EU digital systems at the end of the transition period, then UKCA could see a leap in the number of these requests they get, because at the moment most of those requests take place automatically through those digital EU systems, which we don't have equivalent versions of. So what we've been doing with the Home Office is running a discovery, trying to work out how they can arrange themselves what they could create to maybe handle more requests. So this has involved some desk research, various mapping sessions with the UKCA team, the UK Central Authority team at the Home Office, as well as going down to DVLA in Swansea and talking to their teams. Interviews with different user groups, lawyers and frontline staff and caseworkers at UKCA, as well as at DVLA, questionnaires about the technology they're using, ideation workshops with the Home Office, and reaching out within GDS here in the Cabinet Office to get sort of expert tips and support from stakeholders here. So what we found is a very big and complicated process and journey map that a lot of people are involved with to receive these requests and handle them. You obviously can't see any of that, but you're not supposed to. It's just to show you how big and complicated things are. We've worked out the basic flow of what happens when a request arrives at the Home Office and how they deal with it. Most of these come in by post and fax. The basic fact here is that the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty was signed in 1958, and in some ways it feels like the service we have is kind of from the 50s as well. So a lot of this stuff is coming in by post and fax. 10% of the requests arrive by email from various authorities around the world, but there is no standardised sort of online form for making a request. So even those emailed requests are often just a sort of a written verbal request. One letter that they mentioned to me had come in recently from an Indian police force, and it was 100 pages long, and it was handwritten, and that was all just to get information about somebody. So it's a lot of legwork at the moment. The frontline staff there at the UKCA team are therefore manually processing those requests and turning them into cases on a sort of online casework management system that the lawyers team will then look at. And first thing the lawyers team have to do is check those for errors. In fact, 1 in 5 of the requests that they get aren't actually clear or detailed enough, so they have to be going back to the overseas authority to ask them for more information. The software they're using in-house at UKCA is not very nice. It's not very easy to use. And actually they're often having to employ a lot of workarounds, like having face-to-face meetings just to check on things that each other has submitted through the software. So it's pretty clunky, and there's an awful lot of guidance and manuals. And they don't even own the software themselves, which is not uncommon, so they have to make a request to the third-party company if they want to make any changes and improvements. It takes them about 2 hours in total to process each request. There are small sort of glitchy problems that they have, like if they're going to respond to a request, they often have to contact a UK police force and say, okay, can you hand over this information about Ben Carpenter, because he's been speeding, we need to know stuff about him. And they tag those emails so that when they come back in, they can be automatically logged into their casework system. But police forces habitually remove all extraneous information from emails just as a matter of course. And so mostly the police force emails don't get logged into their casework system. It's just an example. And because the UKCA Home Office and DVLA don't actually have a secure way to send most of the evidence that they're talking about between each other, even within UK departments, a lot of that interaction happens on paper. So the Home Office will email the DVLA, they'll print it off, and then they'll go and find the evidence, and they'll put the printed email and the evidence in the post, and that'll go back across the UK to UKCA. So the intra-UK setup is not ideal. But at the moment, these are relatively small volumes. It's just that if we were to lose access to EU systems, then there might be a leak. So I've very briefly summarised the recommendations and support that we're making out of the discovery, partly because we haven't presented these to them yet, so but they kind of know what it's going to be. But it falls into two kind of broad areas. First is to try and hook themselves up to that DVLA database themselves, so they can bypass the email, print off, and post route. DVLA do have an API into that database, so there may be some policy hurdles to overcome, mostly I think rather than technology ones to enable that. But the biggest recommendation is number 2, and it's kind of enormous, but it feels like it's kind of the elephant in the room with this one from the beginning. There is no online standardized way for overseas authorities or the original end user to actually make the request. So recommendation 2 is create that service. But it would be, we're recommending it be end-to-end, so not just at the beginning, but all of the systems in between the caseworking and the evidence gathering. We broke that down for them into the preparation they would need to do for that, because they are not a user-centered design team. They don't have any tech skills, nor user research, nor service design experience. They're very much an operational setup. So we've offering them support to scope the work, understand the principles and standards that will be required of them. We're recommending that whatever they set up begins by doing more user research with those end users, and then work towards prototyping something, a service, testing, measuring, and improving it. You don't need to read that, but it's just a list of some of the ways in which we at GDS are offering that team in UKCA support to start to undertake that large and probably quite scary task. The great thing is they're very, very keen, they're very, very friendly, they really want to overhaul and improve the way they do all of this. So this is not one of those times when you feel like you're really trying to persuade somebody to do work they're not going to want to do. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you so much from the two of you, our glamorous assistant Clara. So we haven't got any questions for you two on Slido just yet, but just a reminder for people that have just dialed in, if you've got any questions, you go to sli.do and then #show-tell.
I think I can say one, which is from Anonymous. How can you provide a better service for users when they're on the other side of local government, which you said you're not collaborating with for this?
So I'll just repeat the question in case you didn't hear that. How can you provide a better service for users when they're on the other side of local government, which you said you're not collaborating with for this? So I think that goes back to the 2030 strategy. So Angus had to nip off to another meeting, but I will direct you to his Twitter account, and he'll really thank me for that. So his Twitter is @AngusMontgomery. Where's it? That's really tiny. Do you want to run that to the camera? Okay, there we go. That'll do. So sorry you can't be there to answer that question. Have we got any questions for Lena or Ben? Let's have a quick look. No? Okay. Thank you very much. Another round of applause. Alright, so who have we got next? Oh, next. So I believe they've spoken 3 years in a row at this. 3 years in a row at this Open Show and Tell. So I think the very first Open Show and Tell that the Gov.uk design system held, that was, you launched it on the same day, is that right?
Yeah, a bit of live coding.
A bit of live coding.
Never forget that.
Are we doing any of that today, Tim?
No.
No, okay. Well, we're still very excited to hear from you. Thanks very much, Tim.
Hi everyone, my name's Tim, I'm Head of Interaction Design at GDS, and for the last kind of couple of years I've been product managing something called the GovUK Design System. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the work we've been doing this quarter to better understand how all the design systems have been adopted in government and what benefits people are getting from it. So this is the design system homepage. It's a suite of 3 different products that's aimed at designers and developers in government service teams all around the country. And basically, this is the challenge that we're trying to help these teams with. How do we help them all efficiently deliver usable, accessible services like GovUK? So you can imagine these teams are all working independently of each other, but they're all building their own little bit of GovUK. And so what we're trying to do is help them work efficiently and deliver stuff that's usable, accessible, and looks consistent. And like I said, there's kind of 3 products within our service. The first one is the design system itself, and that's guidance and templates and coded examples for all the bits of GovUK that you might need to use in the service that you're working on. So like the headings and the colour palettes and footers, tables and error messages and so on. And then there's a tool called the Prototype Kit, and this is for designers, and this lets designers very quickly make high fidelity prototypes using all of those components to take into user research, and that means that they can test ideas really quickly before building them. And then finally, the third product is it's called GovUK Frontend, and that's a front-end framework, a code library essentially, and it's been tested to be fully accessible and responsive and performant, and it's basically what everything's made out of. So all the styles and the components and the patterns in the design system are made out of this thing called GovUK Frontend. So those are our 3 products, but that's not everything that the team does. We also deliver a lot of training for those products, and we support our users across a couple of Slack channels and on GitHub and through Zendesk. We get about 150 support tickets a month, I think. We do a fair amount of community development and outreach. We host workshops and do weekly calls and so on. And a lot of that work we do to kind of foster collaboration, encourage adoption of our products, but especially to kind of encourage contributions. So the design system relies on contributions from its community of users. Service teams are much closer to our end users than we'll ever be, and so they know whether the patterns and components are working, they can think of ways of improving them, and so all of that stuff gets fed back into the design system, and then all the other teams can benefit from it. So we're pretty confident that our products are working quite well and that teams are benefiting from them. But we wanted to kind of know in more detail, exactly how many people are benefiting and from them and to what extent. So this is the kind of stuff we're expecting teams to be benefiting from. So increased productivity, able to onboard people faster, teams are able to share work more easily, and then as a consequence, services become easier to maintain and more accessible, more consistent, more usable, and so on. But this was the big question we wanted to ask. So we went into public beta about a year and a half ago now, and so the question we're asking is, like, in that year and a half, how much progress have we made? How many people have adopted our service, and how are they benefiting from it? In particular, how much money are we saving government? This is a question that eventually you're going to get asked if you're building things in government. So the first thing we did was we looked at the web traffic, so We looked at visitors to the design system website itself, and we saw that it's gone up since launch by about 250%, and I think last October we had about 20,000 visitors. So this is really, really good. It shows that we're heading in the right direction, but it's not obvious how visitors to the design system website relates to actual work done, because people can visit the website just to have a look around. And people can do work using our tools without visiting our website. So there's not an easy one-to-one correspondence between visits and visitors and work done. So it shows us a growth trend, which is upwards, which is great, but it doesn't really tell us much about absolute usage. The next thing we looked at was to try and look at the code that's actually being deployed by service teams and to see if they're using our code in their code. So we looked at this thing called NPM, Node Package Manager, which is the way that we bundle up all our WK front-end code and let teams use it. And again, we can see that there's a nice upward trend. In fact, I think there are about 26 times more downloads a week than when we launched. It's about 16,000 downloads a week, I think that is. So that's good news. The blue line is WK front-end, and the red line there, that's our previous product, WK Elements, which you may or may not be familiar with. You can see a nice trend there that the new products going upwards, and the old legacy products like fading off nicely. And you can also see Christmas there twice, Christmas 2018 and Christmas 2019. But this suffers from the same problem, which is that it's very good at showing general trends, but it doesn't really tell us a huge amount about absolute usage. So finally, we looked at GitHub, which is a code hosting platform, and it's a very popular one. Probably a majority of government services use it, certainly not all of them, but lots do. And so GitHub has a really nice feature called dependencies, which basically lets you find out all the other code bases on GitHub which are using your code. So we could look at that, and we did some estimates. We figured out that there are about 1,500 different code bases on GitHub which are reusing WK front-end. So that's really good to know. We did a big analysis of all of those repos using a tool called OpenRefine, and we found lots and lots of people making prototypes and building live services and so on. There's an example of some of the services that we found that were using our code there. And when we did the analysis, we figured out that those 1,500 separate repositories probably represent about 300 distinct services. And this was back in September last year, so we expect the numbers actually a fair amount bigger right now. So that was really useful. That's starting to help us understand who's using our stuff, but we wanted to kind of know the more qualitative stuff as well, like so how much are teams actually benefiting when they use our stuff. So our user researcher, Rosie, at very short notice, set up some interviews with designers and developers, 10 designers and developers, to find out how they use our products and how those products help them to do their jobs. And we learned a lot about the different ways that people were benefiting, but people were quite reticent to kind of commit to saying how much more productive they were using those tools than not, which you can understand. But we did get some data. We got some nice quotes. Here's an example, for example, saving up 3 hours of work, hiring 1 or 2 more front-end developers, 2 full-time developers, and so on, this kind of stuff. And so this was starting to kind of help us build a picture of like the scale of the productivity gains that people were getting. And we learned a few other things as well. We learned that half our participants were using our products every single day, and the rest were using them at least once a week. And on average, when we looked at those quotes and other similar ones, we figured that people were saying that they were about 3 to 5 times more productive using our tools. So for example, one person said that they could make a 10-screen prototype in half a day, and that would have taken 2.5 days. If otherwise, someone else said that something that would have previously taken them about 12 days actually took them 4 days. And so these are rough estimates, and it's a small sample size, but like I say, it's enough to give us a sense of how much more productive people are. And so we took these data points about the number of teams using our services and how often they use them and how much more productive they are, and we worked with economists and GDS, and we used that to estimate the total cost avoided by teams who are using the design system. And the model, I won't show the model, but it's based on assumptions about how many teams are using our tools and how often, how much more productive they were, but also what would happen if the design system didn't exist. Some departments we think would probably build their own design systems, others would just like do the work themselves. And then we kind of combine that with information about the average salaries for people who work on service teams in government and so on. We put all of that together and we got down to this number. So we think that the WK design system is saving government about £17 million a year, and that's the kind of conservative estimate. The upper version of that figure is more like 19 million. And just to be clear, this is how much money we think the government would need to spend in order to deliver services of a similar quality without the design system. What we hope is that the money that's been saved is instead being spent on improving end-to-end service transformation. That's the point of the design system. One of the main purposes is that it's there to solve the hard but common problems so that teams can focus on what's unique to their service. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. We've got a question from Sue from Medway Council. How would you persuade a third-party supplier to use the system?
What we're hoping is that what we've made is it's easier to do it using our products than it is to do it without using our products. We know that the design system has been adopted by some local councils already. I think 5 at the last count. We've seen 5 different councils on GitHub who've repurposed the design system. Essex is one of them. There's a couple of others as well. We've got 2 charities, I think, the British Red Cross and Barnardo's, and a couple of other governments, so the New Zealand government and the Australian government, and as of last week we saw the Maldives have also adopted WK for Intent. So we know that it's possible, and we know that other teams have done this work. So maybe one of the things you can do is kind of point to those examples of this has already been done, and kind of maybe that will encourage the supplier to maybe get in touch with those people and understand how it had been done. But yeah, we're hoping that it's kind of self-evidently easier to do it this way than not. Another good angle is accessibility, of course. So something that we're able to do because we're centralised and funded that way is we put a lot more effort and work into making things as accessible as they can be. Probably more effort than any individual service team can or should spend on that stuff. And so by reusing WK for Intent, for example, you're kind of benefiting from all that work.
Cool, thank you so much, Tim. I'm going to move this one out of the way now. We've got Ben from Wales back on Hangouts. Just a reminder for those just joining, please ask questions via Slido. That's sli.do, #show_tell, and we can ask questions on there. All right, so thanks very much, Tim. Up next, we have Kara to talk about the user-centered design communities that Government Digital Service are facilitating for the whole of government. So, big warm welcome to Kara.
Hi, I'm Kara Kane, and I'm the community lead for user-centered design. So yeah, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the user-centered design communities team, what we do, what we've been up to in the last year, and what we're doing going forward. So what we're working towards. We are a very small team. There's about 6 of us. We are a team of practitioners. So there's myself, the community manager, the community support. We have heads of profession across service design and user research on the team, and we also have design trainers and a user research trainer. And we are working on making the case for user-centered design in government. We do that by building awareness, by upskilling people who don't know about the approach, by blogging, by doing things like Services Week, all to kind of spread the message and get people familiar with user-centered design. And we're also working on developing capability across government. So that's with practitioners, so with designers, user researchers, and content designers across government, but also with people potentially outside of digital or working alongside those professions who want to learn more about user-centered design. So that means making sure that people start with user needs, conduct user research, and design and test services across channels so that they work for all citizens. These are the activities that we do. There's a lot of them. They're all interrelated. We're always working on a few of these at the same time. We can't just work on one of them kind of in a silo. I'll read just a few of them out. So working on things like demonstrating the value of user-centered design, guiding and aligning the direction of UCDU government, and advocating for user-centered design. So what do we do? I'm going to tell you a little bit about kind of like our service offering. We run 11 courses across user research, design, service design, and accessibility. So we run them, we help design those courses, and we help organize all of the logistics. Most of the courses are foundational, like intro to service design. We run a basic introduction to user research. We also have now started to run master classes. So for instance, we've now run a service mapping masterclass. We co-organize community meetups. So we work with other departments, other local authorities to organize community meetups. So in this photo is a meetup from, I think, last year, the year before, where we organized a meetup with Hackney Council. And we run these meetups for the different sub-disciplines within user-centered design. So we have design meetups, service design meetups, user research meetups, and accessibility meetups. So we organize a lot of events. These happen probably once a quarter, every few months. And they're really just about getting practitioners together. And they happen in different parts of the country, so it's not just London. Recently we ran a design meetup in Leeds. This month we're running a user research meetup in Shipley and an accessibility meetup in Bristol. Often it's a good mix of talks, hands-on workshops, and time for exchanging experiences with peers. We're also working on sharing good practice. So we've been designing lots of different formats to promote sharing across government. A kind of simple way for sharing across government is through Google Groups and Slack, but we've also been developing other formats. So we've recently started something that we call Service Thursdays, which is a remote case study presentation that happens the first Thursday of every month, and it's by public servants for public servants. So it might be, as Martin mentioned earlier, we had all of these all through Services Week, so it might be NHS presenting on 111, or DEFRA talking about the flood warning service. And then we have all of those on our YouTube page. So we have the UK GovDesign YouTube channel. Some of the videos on there are public, but then we also have some that we keep unlisted for public servants. And we also share good practice through things like Services Week and blogging. We also have international work that we do. So we are supporting a growing international group of designers working in, for, and with governments in more than 70 countries. This work includes organizing events. We run monthly calls. We have a Slack group. We have a community forum. It's a really supportive network of people working to make services better for citizens. And here are a few highlights from the last 12 months. So after a really successful rollout of our one-day Introduction to Service Design course, we followed that up with a two-day Service Design and Practice. The first course gives an overview of service design, and the new course really lets participants try out the tools that they're learning. It involves a section on inclusive services, calculating economic benefits of service design, and testing hypotheses, and much, much more. We've run it 3 times now, always in different parts of the country. We've run it in Ayr and Worthing, Newport, and London. The user research community has been working on creating masterclasses. So these are masterclasses aimed at people who are established user researchers. There have been 3 that were developed over the past year using quantitative data in user research ethics, and the most popular one, Introduction to Survey Design. We have run that 4 times in the last 6 months, and we still have demands for that one. So we're seeing what else we can do with those. We've also been working on co-running training. So over the past year, we've been working on building a pool of trainers in other parts of government, in the wider public sector, who can run training in other parts of the country. And we've developed a model where we invite people to shadow training, we then co-run it with them, and then we support them to run it on their own. So this week, during Services Week, we've had 3 courses running in 3 different cities because of this new way of working. We've had Lisa Jeffrey, who works at GDS, co-running training with Jacinta from the Department of Education in Blackpool and Manchester. And then Lisa ran it a 3rd time this week with Helen from NHS Business Services Authority. So it's really amazing to see our courses running in different parts of the country. And this has also been supported by cross-government design objectives, which we established in March 2019. One of those objectives is to help run design training. We ran our first event with local government. We also worked with Lisa Jeffrey from the GDS national team on this piece of work, and this was hosted by Birmingham City Council. So we brought together around 100 people working in local authorities from across the country, and the aim was to connect up people working in that space, but then to also welcome them to the cross-government design communities, show them the resources available to them, like the community forums and the training and events that we run. And if that wasn't enough, for the last year, we also ran 3 international community events. We partnered with 3 international partners to run events attended by more than 1,100 people. And they were attended by people working in public sector organizations from across the globe. In May, we worked with Code for America to run a one-day conference in Oakland, California. In June, we partnered with the Scottish Government to run a two-day conference in Edinburgh. And most recently, in November, we partnered with the Dutch Government's Users First community to run a three-day conference, our biggest conference, attended by over 700 people, and that one was in Rotterdam. So what's next? We want to do more blogging. So we want to talk more about the work that we do in the Designer Design Communities team, about the training that we run. And we have a new blog, which is called the Services and Government blog. And you can find that by going to services.blog.gov.uk. Did have it remembered. And we have other blogs for user research, accessibility, and design, so you can find those. As well. We have a new head of cross-gov user research that recently joined GDS, and connecting to the 2030 vision, which Angus was talking about at the beginning of the show and tell, how we're going to have a joined-up, responsive way of working. Our new head of user research wants to look at what does that mean for user research and the future of user research, and how can we involve the community in shaping that conversation, and how can we move user research beyond digital development and delivery. And finally, my last slide, measuring. How do we measure the value of user-centered design? It's like the biggest question that we keep asking ourselves on the team. The photo on this slide is from a design sprint that we ran about 5 months ago on measuring user centricity. And this is something that we really want to delve into and develop a piece of work around. And it's really important. And we keep trying to connect up with other people doing work in this space. So if you have any ideas about this, get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kara. This is really, really sweet. You have an anonymous admirer. Not a question, but Kara is truly awesome. Lots of thumbs up following that. But seriously, this whole week would not be possible without Kara and her team. So another round of applause. So we haven't got any questions online. Have we got any questions in the room for the Central Design Communities team? If not, thank you very much, Kara, and I'll pass over to the next speaker. Just a reminder that here's where you can ask questions, slido.do, #showtell. Without further ado, I'm really, really excited to introduce Ariana and Kevin, who are going to talk about their work on the accessibility monitoring team, a year on from when they were first formed. So, welcome to the stage.
Hi everyone, this is Kevin, who's our senior content designer, and I'm Ariana, I'm senior user researcher working on the accessibility, monitoring and reporting team. What's the title? Who we are? Well, we're a multidisciplinary team. We're working in an agile way on developing a monitoring and reporting service for the whole of the UK. Our team is formed of 2 accessibility specialists, a product manager, delivery manager, content designer, user researcher, but also we have a policy engagement person and a campaign manager. What's important is that we're all passionate about accessibility and we're working really hard in delivering this service. So, what we do?
So something about what we do. So really, we're there to respond to reports about public sector body websites. So this is under the public sector bodies websites and mobile applications accessibility regulations 2018. That's a shortened version of it. We will respond when someone reports that there are potentially some accessibility issues and monitor and look at those issues. We also take a random test sample of websites across public sector bodies. So that means that we get a broad range, and obviously that then we can respond based on that to just make sure that we are doing a good job to ensure that the message is getting out there that we need to make public sector body websites more accessible. And So digital accessibility, why it matters. I mean, really, it's about public sector bodies being inclusive. So really, all of the websites that government provides, central government, and even down to like small organisations, need to be accessible, and that could be your local doctor's surgery. And so what we want to do is make sure that we provide as much information as we can to help those organisations whenever they need to go through that process of having maybe an audit on their website to fix any issues that exist. So that's what we do.
The thing is that anyone within the public sector ignoring the accessibility regulations does not respect the rights of citizens. So whoever we are when we're working in public sector, we have a moral obligation to make sure that the end users, whether they're citizens or people working within businesses, they can access those services. Unlike the commercial services where people have a choice in terms of which service they want to use, within government, people don't have that choice. And under the Equality Act 2020, we have a legal obligation as well to provide equal access to people with disabilities. Government is both a service provider and employer, and the Equality Act covers both services providers and employers. So we need to make sure that all the systems that we're designing for external end users and for public servants or civil servants, they're also accessible. For designers and user research, what that means, it means that we need to design not for the fictional average user or the perfect user with good vision, full hearing, with literacy skills, and able to use both the mouse and the touch screen. The truth is that it's rare to find this kind of people, so we need to make sure that we are inclusive. What this could mean to you? Well, if you're a citizen, you can report a problem with the public sector website, and Kevin, for service providers?
So for service providers, really, like if you're providing a service, it means that you might not be meeting the needs. So if we monitor and find that you're not meeting the needs, then it's like, initially it's going to cause reputational damage for your organisation. So it's really important that you understand the regulations and you look at our guidelines and follow those guidelines as much as you can.
On Gov.uk, we also publish guidelines for citizens on how they can report problems with accessibility problems with the public sector website. We're in the process of testing this page with people with access needs in the following weeks, and hopefully we can make some changes if needed. Well, for public sector people.
Yeah, so we have a comms campaign. So there's lots and lots of information on there, getting information out to public sector communications, the areas of communication, so that they can understand these regulations better and share that information. So we're hoping that works really well.
Yeah. And also to go through the steps that people will need to take.
Yeah, so there's 4 steps that they really want to do. So it's like the first one is understand how the regulations will impact your organisation. So it's really important to understand that. Decide how to check your website or app for accessibility problems. Make a plan to fix any accessibility problems you find. So that's critical because you don't want to exclude your users. And then publish an accessibility statement to outline what you've done to deal with any issues.
Now, to inform the development of our service, we conducted lots of research with website managers across a range of public sector organizations, surveyed universities, people in GP surgeries, but also local councils. And based on their feedback, we made improvements to the actual audit reports that the organization will start receiving. We're now planning to do further research that will enable us to improve the guidance on meeting the accessibility regulations and on the process of reporting a service. Anyone interested in participating, or if you identify as a user of the service, please contact me by email at ariana.minock@digital.cabinet. I have an office.gov.uk because we're in the process of recruitment. And yeah, if you have any questions, Slido is the place to ask questions.
Thank you so much, both of you. I'm going to dial in and see if we've got any questions. Hold tight. No more questions? Have we got any questions in the room about what they're doing on the accessibility monitoring team? I've got a question. Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yeah.
What are your hopes for the next year? For your team, not for your team.
I think for the team, just like that their awareness increases significantly, and that the guidance is used well, so that we can improve that, because obviously that we're always iterating that guidance, and we can only improve that by getting feedback from the organisations who are trying to improve their websites and applications.
Yeah. And I think also as the auditing body, we would like to kind of find as many websites as possible as actually meeting the standards, and seeing that people are being proactive in meeting the regulations.
Cool, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So it's been really good to see some of the responses to that question almost earlier. We talked about what's GDS doing for local government, and you can see almost in every single team there's been some really great examples of, okay, we might not have an explicit mandate to support local government, but because of these open communities that we're building and this culture of reuse, we're seeing people sharing and learning. So that's really, really great to see. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Stephen McCarthy to talk about the work they're doing on gov.uk.
So hi everybody, I'm Steve McCarthy, I'm Head of Design here at GDS. So I'm going to talk to you about gov.uk. You probably all know what gov.uk is, but it kind of means different things for different people. Like we talk about gov.uk, the domain, gov.uk, the programme, gov.uk, the provider of services. So I'm going to touch on stuff that kind of talks about a lot of that. So essentially, gov.uk is where the relationship between the citizen and the state happens. Well, certainly the online relationship between the citizen and the state. And effectively it serves a dual role, which I've outlined here. So helping people understand and interact with government, and then the other role is helping government understand people. It has a clear value proposition. It's the online brand for government, so it's the authoritative source of government communications from 25 departments and 385 government orgs. It's home to many public services, so people don't have to understand government structures to access the services they need. It has multi-channel delivery, so it's available for people the way they need it, so whether that's on desktop, mobile, through voice interactions, third-party search, and it has the highest levels of accessibility, which we've touched on throughout this talk, or throughout this day. And it also runs additional platforms as well, so things like campaigns for blogging and email alerts, things like that. So what we found over time is that gov.uk is great if you know exactly what you need to do. The current structure of gov.uk enables users to easily complete well-defined singular transactions like apply for a passport, things like that. But where it gets more difficult is the structure of gov.uk makes it difficult to support more complex interactions or user journeys that include multiple government departments. And that's because gov.uk behind the scenes looks a bit like this. So I'll explain the diagram because it's hard to read all the little copy underneath. But to a user, gov.uk is the thing that they enter to do the thing they need to do. They don't need to understand all the mechanisms that are the infrastructure behind that makes that happen. But behind the scenes, gov.uk is essentially a series of mini kingdoms that look like this. So you have the second from the left there, you have we call internally mainstream content, so it's gov.uk services and information. So that's stuff that's mainly managed by GDS. It's essentially about 1% of the content on GovUK, but it has about 80% of the usage of people who interact with GovUK on a daily basis. And then the fourth one from the left would be the departmental publishing. That's the majority of the content of GovUK, but again has lower volume usage than the mainstream stuff I mentioned earlier. Then you have things like campaigns, fifth one from the left, second one from the right, and then you have at the end there you have things like the service manual and other kind of information about common components and product pages. But it's when the user starts interacting with this one here, which is the government services run by service teams around government, where it starts getting really gnarly and hard to understand how people's end-to-end journeys and how they interact with these when they move off GovUK. And that's because in reality, the user journey looks a bit more like this. So users often have complex journeys that include multiple organisations, services and touch points. And these touch points can include online forums, face-to-face meetings, or interacting with call centres and web chat. And effectively having multiple data controllers like this within a standard user journey means it's difficult, well it's really difficult for government to monitor whether it's providing the optimal experience for users. So what I'm saying here, it's really hard for government to know whether it's doing a good job. And this is a relatively simplified journey here, but let me explain it. So we think, well, to the user's mind, they go onto GovUK to do a task, and we think, it's what the old world we used to live in was, end-to-end transaction, or just singular transactions that they finish and all good. But in reality, when a user is interacting with GovUK, so what I'm trying to identify by these different swim lines here is the user might go onto GovUK, they go to the information pages, and they might start to do a service, but in their mind they're still on the GovUK website, but in reality they've spun off to another service domain that's controlled by a department elsewhere. And they might, whilst they're, say, doing that online transaction, they might jump to another payment provider to pay for the thing. That might be something like GovUK Pay, or it might be another third-party payment provider. Then they might go back to that website, and then they might go back to GovUK, and then they might go to another government service, and then they might go back to GovUK. But in reality, we have no idea what's happening here, because each one of these swim lanes is controlled by the data, and that is controlled by different departments or different organisations, and we don't really have a full picture of what this user journey is. So what we need to do is we need to evolve from supporting just individual transactions to supporting more complex user interactions and whole problems like starting a business or supporting prison leaders. Some of the service communities team have done some excellent work trying to understand these bigger problems, like say starting a business, for example, where they have about, I think the research they did uncovered that it touches about 14 different organisations across 8 different touch points. And a user, depending on their journey and what their needs are, they could interact with anyone of them at any given time. So it's really, really hard to understand this full bigger picture. So what I'm trying to say is the current state of government looks a little bit like this. We have siloed transactions that reflect and indeed reinforce the current structure of Whitehall. We have no context of end-to-end user journeys due to the lack of joined up data, and it's difficult to understand the overall picture of public services. We want to move to a future state that's a bit like this, and lots of this stuff has been talked about earlier in Angus's talk at the very start, and later on by other speakers as well. But we need joined up data that gives us a better understanding of end-to-end journeys. We can then produce insights on this full data picture. And I'm talking like this, anonymized data, but I'm not just talking about, analytics data. I'm talking about understanding call center data and feedback data that different departments are getting from within the user's end-to-end journey, so we can better understand the public service provision in this case. And again, by producing these insights in the full data picture, the next thing is we can then implement better joint governance of service delivery across our boundaries, enabling quicker decision making and how we can improve these services as well. And that's a really important one as well, as this governance model for services that cut across different departments. It's really difficult to implement, it's really difficult to get ownership of this stuff. But the outcomes of this work are really, really positive. So you can develop policy from a user's perspective, not just HM government's perspective. We can reduce failure demand by getting things right early on, first time. And we have more efficient public services. And by more efficient, I mean personalised. So that's giving users the option to interact with more creative products and services that meet and anticipate their needs, and also helps them to do some tasks. Lower friction, so joining our complex information and services beneath the surface, make it easier for users to get things right from the start, and data informed as well. So using the power of data to have better performance insights across government and identifying correlations, important things before they go wrong. And all with the utmost consent models and privacy behind things as well. So users are in control of what they're doing and know what they're doing. And again, anonymised as well, as I mentioned earlier. And some of the work we've been doing on Brexit has started to unlock some of this work that I'm talking about. So things like when I talk about personalised, when we launched the Brexit checker, that's an early example of how we can do more personalised results for users. So basically we ask a user a series of questions, and then the information we give back to them is more tailored to what they need. And again, by pulling the Brexit campaign onto GovUK and by starting to implement cross-gov analytics, we can start to understand users' end-to-end journeys around this information a bit better as well. But it's a long journey, but like we want to move from, you know, kind of the world we're in now, which is kind of dumb content, dumb services that don't really speak to each other, to a world where we have, you know, smarter service content that's structured, automated and personalised. So we can start pulling in things like variable data quickly. We can start surfacing personalised content to the user based on, you know, based on the information they've given us and allowed us to share and pull in. We can start, if we have better structured government data, we can start hitting cross-gov APIs where we need. We already started to implement things like machine-generated recommended links based on what our knowledge of if a user is looking at this thing, they might want to do this thing next. And we can start giving course correction work as well. So if we think, based on what we know about the user, we think they need to do this thing next. And then also, you know, hitting them with more proactive prompts and consent. So they, you know, if they want more information on this thing, we can give them tailored information on that if and when they need. And that's kind of the world we're kind of heading towards. This is kind of a long way off, but we're starting to see the results of that with the work we're doing now. So that's me. It's a quick talk. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Steve. We haven't got any questions on Slido. Have we got any questions in the room? I've got a question.
Yeah.
How do you go about, it's quite tricky, a lot of people think that gov.uk is just a website. How do you go about communicating that to people that think it's just a website?
Well, some of the stuff I've touched on touched on the fact that GovUK is a service provider. Like when we look at that diagram I showed earlier, which looks at the different kingdoms underneath GovUK, shows that it's more just than a publishing platform. It's actually where people go to do the things that they need to do. And that's not just simple interactions, it is the more complex journey. So by us as a team on GovUK, the programme starting to orientate our work about how can we better surface whole problems for users and get them through those whole problems better. That means we're more of a service provider. But also, it's the other side of things, it's two angles, is we need to be where the users are. So if users aren't just accessing GovUK by searching on Google, they're going by voice interaction, they're going by, you know, we need to not just rely on the website to provide the information that we need them to get. So we're looking at it a few different angles in that respect. Cool.
Cool. Thank you very much, Stephen. All right. So next up, really exciting, we're going to be hearing from Katie about gov.uk Pay. Take it away.
Hi there. I'm Katie. I'm a product manager on gov.uk Pay. This is GovPay. I can't even say it. I'm going to refer to it as GovPay from now on because that's just easier to say. So GovPay is a simple way for service teams to manage and take payments. We're currently used by over 100 organisations in central government, local government, NHS and police. So public sector organisations can use Pay to take payments. So I'm going to talk for a couple of minutes about an example of how we make it simple, how we take the stress and hassle out of taking payments. So to take payments, there are two major aspects. There's commercial and onboarding, and there's technical aspects to it as well. So firstly, you have to have a technical means to take payments, and that's something that we provide. And secondly, you have to have a contract
with a payment gateway and merchant acquirer in order to actually take payments and do the processing in the background. You also need things like a merchant account as well. And all of that can take time to get started, and it can cost a lot in terms of procurement and integration costs. So imagine you're in this situation. I don't have a contract and I don't have a development team. How am I going to take payments? We've actually had some services who have needed to take payments literally the next day, and they've started from nothing, no contract, no technical integration. So leaves you in a bit of a pickle. Couldn't resist a bit of Garfield. So we have, we've solved this problem in order to enable services to start taking payments within a day. So solving the onboarding problem. So this is how long it was taking services to start taking payments via gov.uk Pay. So first of all, running procurement in itself can take many months, and then getting set up with the necessary underlying merchant account can take up to about 2 months, and then getting those configured, and often the settings are a little bit confusing and there's quite a lot of back and forth. So we were finding at a minimum it was taking services at least 2 months to actually get started before they could start taking a payment. We reduced it to 1 day, which I think is a pretty good development. So we did that by procuring our own payment service provider, so services can use our contract without having to run their own procurement. The merchant accounts which I mentioned are set up via the API. There are no settings to take care of, so that means that services can start taking payments immediately. And then solving the technical problem. So we provide hosted payment pages on gov.uk, which require no integration at all. This payment link, we call this a payment link. This is a payment link which was used by the Department of Culture, Media and Sport at the Royal Wedding last year, 2 years ago, whenever it was. And that was for photographers to pay to be at the wedding. And that was something that they needed to get stood up in literally a day. And we were able to provide that. So I want to actually show how this works. So I've made a video. Oh, there we go. I've made a video of that onboarding process. Hasten to add, this is not a real department, but maybe it should be. So at this point, our team would go off and just do a couple of checks about whether we think it's appropriate to set up a service, and we would send you some links to enter some information to set up a merchant account. And then after that service is ready to start taking payments. The next slide I want to show is how to set up one of those hosted payment pages. So that's now created a payment page on gov.uk, and this is how it would appear to a user making a payment to hire their tabby cat.
Stacey, and then they would proceed to enter their card details and that payment would be made. So that is how it's possible to take payments in one day, and in fact, probably more like 20 minutes. So that was really easy. How much does it cost to do this? It's free, you just pay transaction costs. How to get started? Go to gov.uk pay.
Thank you so much, Katie. So someone was asking, can't quite see the screen demoing playing that well. Will the demo videos be hosted on the UK Gov Design YouTube channel as well? Let's see if we can get those videos on there. That'd be awesome. Jill Bailey has said, Pay demo looks fantastic. You mentioned the local government, that local government can use it too. What about housing associations and charities too?
That's a really good question. So we're just getting some final legal advice on that at the moment, but I'm hoping it's a positive result.
Cool. Any quick questions in the room? Back. Hold fire, we've got a microphone.
I can shout. Okay, quick, obvious question. Once you go through that transaction, how does the money get transferred to the organisation? So how do you get the cash? So I don't know how a tabby cat sounds marvellous. Can I have two, please? But how does the money get to the organisation? What's the process for that?
Sure. So when you sign up to pay, there's a part of that process that I didn't show you, which was entering in a couple of details to do with your organisation. Some of the details that you'll enter in pertain to your organisation's bank account. So the money will flow. Pay takes the card details. We send them on to a payment gateway. That then does the processing, and the money will be deposited in the services bank account, and that will be using the bank account details which you entered as part of the sign-up flow.
So how long does it take for the other organisation? So say it's another organisation, it's council. How long does it take before they get the money for their cat service?
The money gets settled within 2 working days.
Cool. Final applause for Katie. So next up we have got P, who's a developer on gov.uk Notify. So please give her a very warm welcome.
Hi everyone, do you hear me well? Yeah, amazing. So this showcase has been pretty long so far, hasn't it? So I say let's take just like 1 minute to relax our eyeballs a bit, because looking at the screen all this time, your eyeballs must be really dry. Probably you're not like making them moist enough. So close your eyes just for like a minute. And take a deep breath in through your nose and sigh out through your mouth. And another deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And last one, deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And now just let's spend a few seconds feeling our bodies, feeling where it might be stiff, where it's alright, where you might feel our clothes or air on the skin. And now let's come back slowly, wriggle your fingers, wriggle your toes, and slowly, gently open your eyes. Okay, take a little stretch if you feel like it. I'm sure you're pretty stiff, I'm pretty stiff. Okay. Now we're ready. We're ready to tackle the last couple of presentations. So I'm P and I'm from Notify. Ta-da! And Notify is a way to send messages to notify our citizens. So why Notify happened? Why was it started? So in call centers, 1 in 4 calls was someone asking for an update. Like, you know this feeling when you're waiting for results and you don't know what the result will be, even for your visa or your health or something else, and it's like, what's the result? And people were calling all the time, you know, have you got it yet? Has it been processed? When will I get it? And so it was considered that we will need a way to tell our citizens about the thing, the result they're waiting for, the outcome. And because when we often know the status, but often we don't tell unless the citizen calls. And this is how Notify came to be. And thanks to Notify, we can make it easy to keep users informed via text messages and emails and letters. And this is really nice because this way services can be proactive in informing their users about different outcomes. So, for example, GP services can send text for appointments, councils can send text or emails about council tax or refuse collection, and all the other myriad small things that earlier were a bit more difficult to keep in contact with citizens, and now it's easier. And we make it very easy for services to use Gov.uk Notify. We try to make it as easy as possible. So it's easy to integrate for developers, to integrate with Gov.uk Notify and send emails automatically through scripts. But for people, for teams who don't have developers, it's also easy to use Gov.uk without any system integration, just through our web interface. It's just like click, 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 done. Send. Last year we have experienced a sharp uptake in Notify use from 719 to 1664 live services. It's been so many new services have started using us. Lots of blue badge services, lots of local government councils, lots of GP surgeries. They all started using Notify, like lots of them. I think the word of mouth has worked. And the teams which use Notify, we generally divide them into 3 groups. Those are digital teams, operational teams, and small teams. And today we will talk about operational teams and a challenge that they face and how we're solving it now. So many operational teams, they have to send letters, and they spend lots of time doing this, packing letters to envelopes. Here is a caseworker in land registry stuffing a letter into an envelope. This is taking lots of civil servant time. And this is Office of the Public Guardian. And both those places, they're stuffing envelopes. Noreen, pictured here, says this is the worst part of her job because it's time she could be spending helping people, and instead she's stuffing envelopes. And here is a police station and for Thames Valley Police, and they bought like special printers, like they are big, expensive to maintain as well. And what they do is they print and fold and stuff the letters. And you know, this is taking lots and lots of resources, and it doesn't need to be like this. Like using Notify would save the teams like £1 per letter at least. We've heard even estimates that some people, for some teams, it takes £3 to send each letter when you consider in the time spent on it and time spent maintaining the printers and stuff like this. And yeah, and right now these teams can't use Notify to send their letters. Why? After all, we have letter sending feature like from template, but the problem is this it's pretty easy to use, it's pretty nice, but the problem is it's not integrated with their systems. Lots of operational teams have their systems where they track interaction with the user, and like different applications for like benefits and stuff. But if they send letter via Notify, there will be no trace in their system of this, and this is a problem. So we made a feature just for this kind of teams. And this actually for this feature, I would like to especially thank Katie from our team, who's a developer as well, and who made most of the work on this feature. And this is sending precompiled letters, which means that those teams can now have a PDF letter, which is already made by their system, and they can upload this ready letter into our system via the uploads menu. So they click the upload, and they want to upload the letter, they choose a file, and what happens? Oh no, this letter is outside of printable area. Drake is unhappy. No, this is unacceptable. But luckily we show them where is the printing area, where is the borders, so they know how to fix it. So they upload the letter again. They can also choose which second or first class do they want to send it. And yeah, this letter is alright, let's send it. And ta-da! Just like this, with few clicks, they have sent a letter. No packing into envelopes, no waiting for the postman. This is already on its way to the user. Yeah, thank you so much.
So we'll just read out a couple of nice people saying thank you so much for that exercise at the start. 2 people wrote in to say thank you, and I personally feel a lot more relaxed and now ready to tackle the last speaker.
We can do it.
Someone said Drake has made it big, lots of exclamation marks. Yeah, I love that stuff. Just a word. So we've got a few questions that are coming online that have been for previous speakers. I think what we'll do is we'll address them at the end if our speakers are still out. So let's just give it a head up. This is how you ask questions. Go to slide.do, #show tell. Any final questions for the... Oh, we do have one. Sorry, just before you run off. Catherine from the Department for Education. All of this is really cool. Can you give us a little spoiler of what's next on Notify's roadmap in terms of feature improvements? Are we allowed to do that? Can we say it?
Oh yes, of course. So there is a few things that I'm really excited about. So soon we want to work on sending international letters. So our services will be able to send letters all over the world, not only in the UK like there are now. Then there is one other really exciting thing, which will be multilingual templates, which means like for example, in Wales, services need to send a letter in 2 languages at once, in English and in Welsh. And right now, it's a bit of a problem, like we don't have a template for that. That would like enable to send the same content in 2 languages, like together with the address and everything like that. But soon we will have that too. So those are, I think, 2 most exciting ones for me.
So it looks like we've got one more, Pete. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Laura Churchill, where can we see some real-life examples of messages sent by gov.uk Notify? We're writing some.
So this is a good question. I don't think right now there is a repository of such messages, but you can go on our Slack channel on like XGov Slack and ask other services, and I'm sure they will share their messages. But also on our roadmap, we have a development for this year where we will be writing guidance on how to write good messages, good content. So this is something to look forward to.
That's really exciting, and it's really cool that you'd be looking at multilingual, because when I was lucky enough to be over visiting the Canadian Digital Service in Ottawa, they forked, i.e. copied gov.uk Notify, and they will be looking to send out letters, texts, emails in both French and English, so I'm sure they're going to be keeping a close eye on that. Let us know if you're dialed in from Canada, say hi. Right, thank you so much, Billy. We have one final speaker. We have saved the best till last. Please welcome Alkesis, who's going to be giving a talk about standards assurance at the Government Digital Service.
Hi everyone. I'm aware of the fact that this is the last presentation. Thanks for that. So I'll try to keep it light as service assessments can be. So still up here, just bear with me. And there we are. Don't try to pronounce my name, please. So I'm a digital assessor in the Standards and Assurance team, and I'm very excited to be standing here representing my team today. We are a team of 8 digital engagement managers and digital assessors, led by Simon Everest, Club. We work with service teams across government, supporting them in meeting service standard. So, service standard has been around since 2013. I'm sure that all of you have a bit of an idea of what I'm talking about, I hope so. But if not, it's been around since 2013, and essentially it's a set of principles on how public services should be delivered or should aim to be delivered, so that we can assure that they're of high quality and meet user needs. But we just didn't set a standard. We've also provided a manual to help you, support you in meeting the service standard. Right. Service assessments. I can't keep that light, I'm sorry. I'll try. So, service assessments are peer reviews of how services have been built against the service standard. Sorry, I'm going back. They're facilitated by digital experts across government, and essentially we just want to be transparent about how public services are being built and iterated. What did we do in 2019? Lots of stuff, I can assure you of that. So our main focus for 2019 was the launch of the updated service standards. So we went down from 18 standard points to 14 standard points, trying to make your lives much easier. We're currently working with service teams that started their discovery and alpha in the summer of 2019. They're the early adopters of the new standard, and we're still learning a lot and we're still iterating. So if anyone has input or questions, please share those with us. So one of the things that we tried to master last year was publishing assessment reports. So we believe in transparency. We think all the information around how public services are being built should be shared and transparent online. So we're aiming to publish all that information. It's available to the public if you want to access that. And we delivered a lot of assessor training, not just in London, but up north and in the west of England, to grow the assessor pool, and with the vision that one day we'll be able to facilitate assessments at service teams' locations. That's a picture of us and the team delivering training up in Manchester. So, more importantly, what are we aiming to do in 2020? We're working towards organising an assessor forum. Essentially, we want to get assessors together to share their experiences and what's going well, what's not going well, and actually learn more about their experiences assessing against the new standard. Some of you might have heard of a very, very catchy quote, "Do you believe in life after life?" So we are exploring the concept of live reviews for services that have launched and are currently live. We want to continue applying assurance and create an appetite for continuous improvement of public services across government. And finally, we want to change the perception around assessments. They're not scary. We're not aiming to make your life difficult. We just want to make it a very, very positive experience. So whilst most teams would probably expect the Spanish Inquisition, we just want to remove the stigma, if I'm allowed to say, around service assessments and actually turn it into a positive experience. So members of my team are trying to engage with service teams quite early on, manage their expectations around service assessments, help them prepare and build a narrative around the way they're working together and delivering a service. And we also want to make sure that service teams are coming for an assessment not because they're running out of time or money, but because they've actually reached a significant milestone in their delivery. So let's say assessment should be a day of fun. Or, I mean, that's quite the dream, but we want service teams to come and showcase their work and take pride in what they do, share their lessons, what went well, what didn't go very well, what they're aiming to fix in the next phase of their delivery, and also don't forget that we learn from you when you're being assessed, so it's your time to shine, essentially. Any questions for me? I'm very impressed at the timing. I thought I'll take much longer. No? That's a good thing, I guess.
We do have a question.
All right, that's good.
It's from Simon.
My boss. Great.
Simon says, I'll keep this. Is it true that your mum is in the audience today?
Yes, I brought my mum to this presentation so I can prove to her I have an actual job. Great. Anything else?
Yeah, we've got another one here.
Oh.
This one's from Paul Kenner. How did something like the single online platform that's SOP to us manage to pass the service assessment?
Can Simon answer that? I think my colleague James, it didn't. It didn't. So I think I'm not sure about what approach we've taken into this, but I know there have been a lot of discussions around enhancing the experience for us because we're users too. So I leave it there, and I'm happy to pick this up with Paul. Great, thanks. And that's I guess that's a wrap.
Nearly.
And another question.
Got another one?
Yeah.
How do you find out about assessor training? Where and when?
Great question. So I think if you're interested in becoming an assessor, I'd ask that you write to the Digital by Default email address, and we will get back to you with a future date, hopefully near your location, so we remove inconvenience and CO2 emissions. We'll come to your location, we'll aim to get a group of people together to deliver training regionally, but back to the question, email the DBD email address, and we'll get back to you with future dates. Yeah? Thanks a lot.
Cool, thank you so much. We have got a reply from Simon, just adding a little bit more to the single online platform. This is like how we do our expenses and travel booking and the sorts of internal services that we use as civil servants. So Simon says, SOP predated the service assessment process, so that's why it's not being through an assessment. Yeah, someone else confirming that. Cool. Thank you so much, Alki. Have a great weekend. Martin, do we want to do the thing? Yeah, let's do the thing. All right. We're really close to the end of Services Week, so this is really exciting. It's been a huge pleasure taking part in it. But I think we have to say a huge thank you to the team behind it. So I want to invite the team to the front to take a bow and have one final round of applause before we call it a wrap. So please welcome the team, and we've got, this is wonderful. Come on. So, in the absence of people that can't quite be with us today,
We're going to show them to the camera. So do you want to talk through what's going on here?
Okay. Hello. Cara, who you saw earlier, has had to leave. This is Alison, who has been at home providing at-home assistance to make sure that the show and tell today has worked well. And this is Jonathan, our head of research, who wasn't able to be here today, but is also part of our team. And this is the rest of the User Centered Design team who have put on Services Week.
As we said at the beginning, this was really a cross-government, cross-location effort, and with more than 80 events across the country. I mean, this is nothing this small team can pull off and would ever be willing to pull off, but it's really an effort where people in the departments, in the government organizations have identified what is actually the need in their specific location, and what is it that people want to understand in relation to better service provision, and they have been creating specific curricula and specific formats suitable for their locations. So I think the big applause has to go to everyone who has been helping to make this happen. So it's a really big team effort, and thanks everyone out there all across the country for participating and organizing Services Week.
So, I'd like to ask one of you to stamp the traditional done poster. Yeah, we're going to do this. Just there, it's great. Right, is that? Yeah. And Services Week is done. Oh, no. It's done. Cut. You can view it online. Yeah. Cool. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks so much, Harry. Thank you.